Consultative Forum for February. My name is Martin Matichka. I'm the Group Manager for WA Operations based here in Perth, and welcome you along to this forum. First, acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, seas and waters across Australia. We honour the wisdom of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders elders past and present, and embrace future generations. We acknowledge that wherever we work, we do so on Aboriginal and Torres Straits Islanders lands, and we pay respect to the world's oldest continuing culture and First Nations people's deep and continued connection to country, and hope that our work can benefit both people and country. So that's great. Just a bit of a reminder on AEMO competition law. This is a standard form that we have in all our sessions, so just please be aware of that, what we can and cannot discuss. It looks like we're straying into that type of territory. We'll just have to, I just need to put a pause on that part of the conversation. Great. Okay, standard housekeeping practices for online forums. So look, if you could just, during the presentation, just keep your microphone just on mute, just stop some of the background noise. Certainly encourage questions, so please do so. And also you can leave your QA off, sorry, your camera off, except when you're asking questions. We'd love to see what you look like, but we just don't want to flood out everybody's network. We also have a dedicated QA at the end of the session if there's some other stuff that you would like to raise, or if you want to go in a bit more deeper. And then, as always, you're quite welcome to reach out to us after the forum if there's anything particular that's been raised or discussed that you want to bring up in the forum, or you thought up later. So very, very welcome to take those queries as we go on. And as a last reminder before we kick off the session is that we want to make this as productive as possible for industry. So if you have any requests or suggestions how we actually construct these forums better, look, please reach out to us and we'll endeavour to build that into future forums. So great. So moving on to today's agenda. Effectively, this should have been sent out. We actually do have a slightly revised pack that we're going through today. We had to change a couple of one of the presenters, and we updated a bit more information around the operational demand slides that Samantha Bailey is actually giving a presentation on. So we will update that at the end of the forum and send out the revised presentation as well on that one. But with that, I'd just like to quickly cover, does anybody have any comments on the minutes that were sent out with the last one? I know we got one query back from one of our stakeholders, and I hope I've closed that one off, but happy to take any other comments if anybody has any. All right, I can't see anybody's hand up. If I've missed anything, just certainly take yourself off mute and raise it. Otherwise, I'll say they're approved. We are going to try to streamline the minutes. So we're going to endeavour to get them out a little bit earlier. So about 5 business days after the meeting, and we're just going to ask for comments, maybe 5 business days after that, just so we can put them up the website a bit more timely than the cadence that we're doing at the moment. So just be aware of that as a change in process, just to turn this around a bit quicker. Okay, so with that, I will just kick us straight on to our first presenter. So I'd like to welcome Aidan. So welcome Aidan. So over to yourself.
Oh yeah, thanks for that, Martin. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Aidan Barker. I'm the Manager for Government and Stakeholder here at AEMO in Western Australia. So welcome and thank you for joining us on today's forum. Just a quick update regarding some big things that are happening in the West. The first is the Allowable Revenue Framework Rule Change Proposal, which AEMO put up last year. And just wanting to note where we're at in that process. So first to thank stakeholders and market participants for their thoughtful submission to the rule change proposal process. Key issues and feedback coming out of that, clearly concern regarding rapid increases in market fees, also a very strong desire for the Economic Regulation Authority to continue to be involved in some way in overseeing AEMO's budget making and fee setting, and also a desire for greater certainty on the part of future market fees, and some sympathy, I think, for AEMO in terms of the current process, which is seen to not be working 100% well for anybody. So, acknowledging that, we're supporting Energy Policy WA and the Coordinator of Energy's proposal to suspend the allowable revenue framework pending its review, and we'll be working with Energy Policy WA throughout that review, and also engaging with stakeholders such as yourselves for that process, and through a variety of different mechanisms, such as revisiting the Strategic Energy Forum, which did hold a session in March, I think, May last year. So resurrecting that, also having WA representation on AEMO's Financial Coordination Committee, and also further to the rule change proposal, kicking off the Major Projects Working Group via the Market Advisory Committee. So through those mechanisms, even though the framework is being suspended, continuing to engage with stakeholders throughout this next period of both the review and also the setting of budget and fees for the next financial year. The second is Project Jupiter. So for those of you who didn't catch it, Project Jupiter was announced on the 30th of last month, so still pretty recent. At a high level, it's a kind of a follow-on from Project Symphony, whereas Project Symphony demonstrated the technical feasibility of aggregating DER to provide power system services and also benefit consumers. Project Jupiter is really about making it real. So actually integrating DER and aggregated DER in the power system via changes to the wholesale electricity market rules. And we'll have future engagement and be talking more about Project Jupiter at an upcoming forum specifically on DER. So that's the DER Market Participation Forum, which we're currently planning for March. Third thing is the DER Act, which is apropos. So just noting its recent commencement. So that was Thursday last week. Executive Council of Government approved new regulations, which in effect bring the main parts of the DER Act, which was made by Parliament last year, into force. And the key elements of that are the new state electricity objective to replace the current wholesale electricity market objectives, and also a expansion in the role of the WEM rules and new heads of power. So what that means is, whilst you won't see changes to the actual rules on day one, their formal legal name is the Electricity System and Market Rules, and the scope of those rules is expanded to include not just the stuff that's currently in there, but also matters such as electricity network access, matters that are currently dealt with under Western Power's technical rules, and also DER related matters. So matters relating to the regulation of low voltage networks, which currently don't really have a place in regulation. In future, rules will be able to be made in the electricity system market rules, previously the WEM rules, in relation to all of those matters. But on day one, really the only thing that's happened is we've got the new state electricity objective, which means that if new rules are to be made and procedures reviewed or new procedures developed, they'll need to have consideration of those objectives. Again, probably going to be the subject of future discussion. And finally, the WA stakeholder survey. So for those of you who received it late last year, I was at the beginning of December. Thank you very much for your responses. WA actually had a much higher level of response than we experienced nationally in response to the stakeholder survey. And there were some really key messages coming through from that. So firstly was areas where we can certainly improve customer service and responsiveness to queries from stakeholders and market participants. Also making it easier to access our data and information. So lots of commentary regarding the data dashboard, and certainly we recognise that there's areas for improvement. Being more transparent around how we interpret the rules and where there might be room for interpretation of the rules. So explaining more of that rationale, where there is room for us to have a view. and also ways in which we can make forums such as this more two-way in terms of communication. So all of those, we'll be kicking off initiatives with regards to, and we'll be talking about them more in future forums such as this. Thank you very much, and over to you, Martin.
Great, thanks very much, Aidan. Okay, any questions on that update there before we move on to the next item on our agenda? Just having a quick look at the chat. Looks like you got off this time, Aidan. Okay, thank you very much for the update. It's good to give us an overview on those things. All right, so now we move on to an update on the operational demand record over the last couple of months. It's been certainly quite a challenging time on the power system. So over to yourself, Sam. The floor is yours.
Thanks, guys. Good morning, everyone. Am I able to share my screen? Or
yeah, I think it's working fine. Hold it.
Oh, 2 seconds, sorry.
It's okay, no problems.
Should perfect. Can you guys all see that?
Yeah, it's up there now, so all yours.
Great. Make that. Cool. Good morning, everyone. My name is Samantha Bailey, and I'm a power system engineer for the operational planning and forecasting team. Our team produces operational forecasts, schedules both generator and network outages in the Swiss so that the power system can run securely in real time. Today, I'm going to cover the recent heat wave in the Swiss that drove record load on the system. So Western Australia experienced a record-breaking heat wave in late January, with temperatures soaring in the mid-40s and breaking records across the state. The heat wave already placed significant strain on the energy system. However, the concurrent development of a tropical cyclone offshore further complicated matters. This combination significantly challenged our ability to forecast peak energy demand. The heat wave drove up baseline demand, while the cyclone introduced forecasting uncertainty due to the potential shifts in humidity, cloud cover, and winds. Together, these events were major drivers of the exceptionally high energy loads we observed. So around 5 days out from the heat wave, the planning team was made aware of an impending string of very hot and humid days. This was seen in the operational updates from the BOM and in the 7-day ahead load forecast. On the left here, you can see the forecast, and on the right, you can see the weather pattern that eventuated. The combination of the cyclone and the hot weather meant we had flooding in the north of WA, and we had a heat wave in the Swiss. This led to Western Australia having its warmest January on record. This meant that WA experienced a record high of both their mean maximum temperature and their mean minimum temperature. And in the graph on the top, you can see a heat wave. You can see the heat wave starting to kick in on about the 20th of January as the temperatures rose for the rest of the week. This weather data was used to forecast the loads for the Swiss for the next week. So this is the week ahead forecast for this high demand week. So the blue curve that you can see is the forecast produced by the forecasters on our team, and the greeny turquoise colour is the actual demand experienced by the system. As you can see from this, the loads were predicted to be over 4 gigawatts on the whole 5-day period, from Monday the 20th of January to Friday the 24th of January. These forecasts indicated that the power system would be operating under LOR2 and LOR3 conditions in the 7-day horizon if we didn't take any of the appropriate actions. So the following slide will just outline the actions that WA operation takes prior to an LOR event day. So 7 days out, we will monitor the forecast and the available generation to ensure that there is enough to meet the loads. We identify any LOR conditions, and we investigate and validate record load forecasts. 3 days out, we notify the network operator, indicating the likelihood of an LOR event day, and they are notified of any potential network outage cancellations. And we also notify Synergy and let them know that they'll need to dispatch Muja 6 under the reserve outage mode for the LOR days. And then 1 day out, the supplementary capacity participants are advised that they may be required to activate their supplementary capacity contracts. And we also monitor the day ahead forecast. So here is the day ahead forecast for our record demand day on the 20th. The week before forecast is shown in the turquoise colour, the day ahead forecast is the blue, and the actual is the black. The day ahead here is used to make LOR decisions. As mentioned before, these forecasts face some uncertainty due to the cloud cover and the humidity factors from the cyclone. Despite this, you can see that the forecasts were quite accurate, except over peak, which is where we use our mechanisms for an LOR condition to reduce the load. So here are the operational actions that the real-time operators will take on an LOR day. So first off, we'll declare LOR conditions via a market advisory to notify all market participants. On the day, all available generation is dispatched, including Muja G6, which was notified a few days prior. SC and NCAS contracts are activated along with DSPs. And AEMO also sets the optimal ESS fleet that Wendy will use to manage not only load, but the essential system services that keep our system secure. And on the closeout for the day, we restore any actions that were taken under the LOR state, and all market advisories are withdrawn. So now I'll just go through a timeline of what happened on the 20th of January for our record demand day. So at about midday, LOR1 was declared via a market advisory. At around 2:30 p.m, LOR2 was declared. And just after that, a decision was made to call in Stage 2 SC and NCAS. Then at around 4:30, these contracts were activated to about 106 megawatts. Then the peak occurred at 4,486 megawatts over a 5-minute average, and we calculated the remaining headroom to be about 542 megawatts. Finally, the market advisories were withdrawn and the system returns to a reliable operating state. This slide demonstrates the lack of trough that was experienced on our record day. The plot on the left shows January 20th, our record demand day, and the plot on the right shows a sunny summer day on the 29th of January. Here you can see there isn't really a midday trough, whereas usually there would be over here. This is due to a combination of high overnight temperatures, high humidity, and cloud cover, which affected the distributed PV penetration on the Swiss. So cloud cover created a lot of volatility on this event day, which meant there was much lower DPV penetration. Here you can see that there's a dip in the load at around 2 p.m. This was due to a patch of cloud cover clearing in the afternoon, and you can see this from the graphic on the right. You will be able to see towards the end that there is a bit of clearing of the cloud cover. This demonstrates how cloud cover can make it difficult to forecast the loads. So now I'll run through a bit of the stats for our record demand day. So as I said earlier, the maximum demand was 4,486 megawatts at 6:30, and the instantaneous demand was 4,502 megawatts at 6:32 p.m. The maximum temperature was 43.6 degrees, and that was cloudy and a tropical cyclone. 11.5 megawatts of SC was activated, along with 94.5 megawatts of NCAS. So on that day, a number of places across WA experienced maximum January temperatures. So that included Hillary's Boat Harbour, Gingin Aerodrome, Busselton, Jarrelwood, Geraldton, and Jurien Bay. These high temperatures were driven by the tropical cyclone, contributing to cloud cover and higher dew points, and a ridge developing in the south of the state, resulting in an easterly wind regime over southern WA. So this is a fuel mix from the record demand day. So at the time of the peak, so there was about 56.3% gas, 29.8% coal, 6.6% battery. Obviously, very little contribution from solar as the sun had set by that point. And here's a timeline of the record demand in the Swiss. And you can see our event day over here. These records are as of the 25th of January because we have had a few demand days fall within the top 10 in the past couple of weeks. The 20th of January record surpassed the previous record by over 250 megawatts, which occurred last year during a February heatwave. And the demand on the Wednesday of this week also became our 10th highest record over here. Here's just a summary of the rest of the week. So we've been through the Monday with the record, then Tuesday nearly reached the 4 gigawatt mark, but fell a bit short at 3,982 megawatts at 38.3 degrees. Then on the Wednesday, it was 4,042 megawatts at 38.4 degrees. And then on the Thursday, 4,019 megawatts with 39.7 degrees. And then it cooled down to about 32.1 degrees on the Friday with a demand of 3,540 megawatts. So now I'll just run through the rest of the week. So as I said on the previous slide, the demand on Tuesday was 3,982 at 5:55, and the instantaneous demand was 3,998 at 5:58. The maximum temperature was 38.3. Once again, we had cloudy and cyclone conditions. On this day, we had 141.2 megawatts of SC and 94.5 megawatts of NCAS. The operational demand was quite high during the entirety of this day, and the peak was forecasted to be earlier than usual due to the cloud cover and the limited amount of DPV available. So you can see here around 2:30 p.m. there was a reduction of load. This was due to supplementary capacity being called earlier on this day due to the earlier forecasted peak. And you can see the demand rising again as DPV reduces due to the sun setting. So this slide demonstrates the fuel mix of cloudy versus sunny day. So on the left here is our cloudy day on the 21st, and this is a sunny day on the 29th. On the left, you can see that there's much more gas being burned during the day rather than the DPV. This is obviously due to the cloud cover. And then for the rest of the week, so the Wednesday, there was a maximum demand of 4,043 megawatts at 5:30 and an instantaneous demand of 4,085 megawatts at 5:30. The maximum temperature was 38.4 degrees, and there was no SE or NCAS on this day. Once again, here's the fuel mix, and here's where the peak occurred. And finally, for the Thursday, the max demand was 4,020 megawatts at 6:40. Instantaneous was 4,043 megawatts. The maximum temperature was 39.7 degrees. There were bushfires on this day as well as the other conditions from the rest of the week. And the supplementary capacity was 65 megawatts on that day. And no NCAS. And finally, this is the fuel mix for that day. Once again, the demand happened here. And yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know. That is all.
Great, thanks very much. There is actually one question been dropped in the chat from Ben. So, I mean, Ben, you're quite welcome to come off mute if you like to ask it, or otherwise I can just read it out. What's your preference? I'll read it out for you. The
so I can talk
you go
if
for
you
it.
want,
Okay.
Martin.
Yeah, no problems. Always like to hear from you.
So just questioning about the peak calculation. Obviously, we had this conversation last year during the forecasting reserve meetings. It didn't seem realistic, and maybe they can hide behind 2 years in 10, but maybe it'll be adjusted this year. We'll see. I'm very curious to see whether the SRC impact and the NCAS impact are added back to the peak that is shown by these numbers, because if you don't, it seems like a bit of double counting, because the NCAS has been allocated capacity, but if you use it to reduce the peak, you're allocating capacity for something that well, I'm sorry, I'm not explaining it very well, but the peak number is reduced by the NCAS that you dispatched, but then you're using also the NCAS to supply the peak that is calculated. So will this be unadjusted or readjusted?
Oh, yeah, I think I might pass that one to Nicholas. I think he's got a bit more
Yeah.
information on that one.
Hey Ben, I'm not too sure on the details because I'm not super au fait with the reserve capacity processes, but I do know that we do work out estimates on the reductions that we see from supplementary capacity and NCAS and DSP and those types of responses, and we factor those back into the reserve capacity processes when we calculate things like and the ESU processes when we calculate forecast demand, and we undertake all of those processes. I'm not sure with the details, but I do know that they are factored back in somehow. And if you're interested in the details, I'm sure you can reach out to the capacity investment team.
Great, just confirming. So when we see the ESU come out this year, they'll say our peak was 4833 or whatever the number was, plus the 95 that was dispatched downwards.
I don't know exactly what that will look at, but I do know that when they work out some of their forecasting, that they do factor some of this in. But I would have to refer you to the ESU team to get the details.
Yeah, can I just jump in and say that will be, so the ESU team is actually looking at all of these measures that we need to take into account. I think Katie, you are already, I can see you on screen. So if you want to take it from here, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks, Nidika. Look, we're not seeking to do any double counting, but we are wanting to make sure that we are sort of solving for the true peak that we would have, but for those reductions. So we've been working through with our demand forecasting team to make sure that on the demand side that is factored in, and we're training the model appropriately, but also making sure that we do make it very clear in the discussion so that our readers can sort of follow along the logic as well. So if there's any sort of further things that you're concerned about, happy to have a further chat then to make sure that it's reflected in the ESU.
Cool. Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah, no, it's a really good question because I can see where you're going. You don't want an artificially low figure that's driving the model going forward, which would just leave us into a sort of a cyclic problem in the future. So yeah, great observation, Ben, and we'll see how that gets represented up in through the this year's ESU. Okay, so yeah, Dora's actually asked a question as well. So is the 95 megawatt NCAS, was it energy injection services, not energy withdrawal reduction? Not sure if we got the answer to that one off the top of our fingers, but what we might do is we might take. Okay, you got that one. Okay.
The ones we mentioned were the manual activation ones, so we're not talking about kind of the registered facilities that are going through WEMD.
Yeah, okay.
We're just talking about the additional actions.
Yeah, okay. So that's okay. So they're the ones that registered, and that would have been in the slides to do with the injection from BESS, I think, which was in one of the slides that was presented, if I interpret that one correctly. So what we'll do, we'll just double check that one, and we'll loop back to you, Dora, on that one, if that's okay. Cool. Okay, look, yeah, great, really interesting. I mean, it was a very challenging period on the power system. The challenges associated with the cloud, you can really see them affecting in the demand, the lead up to those peak periods, and it's something that we watch very closely, and we really enjoy sharing it with the rest of the market. Certainly, the getting through that period relied not, we sort of operating the market, but relied very heavily on people's participation in both the generation and our colleagues at Western Power for keeping the network through those very extreme periods and temperatures as well. So thank you very much for everybody over that week, and hopefully if we get any more heat waves for the rest of this hot season, they're not as extreme as that one. So if there's no further questions, I can't see anybody with their hands up or messages in the chat box. We will move on to the next question. So our next presentation, and that's to do with the QED, and Adrian will be giving us an overview of the last QED. So over to you, Adrian.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, that's me. Just give me a quick thumbs up or something that you can see me and hear me. Excellent. All right, thanks so much. So we're going to go back a little bit in time and look at Q4, so that's of 2024, so that's October, November, December of last year, and talk about the quarterly dynamics, energy dynamics report that covers that period. So this came out, I think, just a little under 2 weeks ago, but something that obviously in the name we release every quarter. And then often we have in these quarters, we have, I guess, incremental changes and things like that to various parts. But this quarter, we really saw some very interesting changes in dynamics and a lot of different things occurring within the WEM. So I guess just to kick off, 4 of the key insights or key dynamic changes that we saw within this quarter was the increasing battery capacity continuing to drive change. So that's in both energy demand and generation, so things like fuel mix, but also within the frequency co-optimized essential system service markets as well. We had a bunch of demand records, so Sam just talked about ones that happened in Q1 of 2025, so no doubt the Q1 2025 QED is going to be quite interesting as well. But we did see a number of Q4 records occur and a number of records, overall records that occurred in Q4 too. So that was in underlying demand and increasing DPV and things like that, but we'll go into that in a little bit of detail. The fuel mix, with the rise of batteries increasing DPV and things like that, as well as lower coal, we saw some changes in the fuel mix. And then we also saw that, I guess, further down the line, driving some lower emissions as well. Some changes in the cost components as well. So we saw a slight reduction in the energy price, and then we saw some changes within the essential system service markets, some due to rule changes. The FCAS cost review happened partway through the quarter, and then we also had the commencement of a number of NCES or non-co-optimized essential system services start. So we can see those changes come out in some of the costs as well. If you haven't read it already, this report is available online. If you can just go to this link here, and it's there. We also include the underlying data that for each of the plots, each of the graphs we have in a separate workbook that's accessible from the same place as well. Okay, just firstly on demand trends, we saw operational demand, so that's the demand that's met by the dispatch of registered facilities. That was down by about 17 megawatts, but underlying this, there was actually some large changes. So we saw the increase in underlying demand of 105 megawatts, but that was outweighed by an increase in distributed PV of 110. There was a couple other small components as well underneath that, but they were the key drivers. And one of the reasons that we saw an increase in underlying demand, particularly during the daylight hours, is because of increases in the battery withdrawal or charging. So prior to Q4 2024, we saw an increase of 425 megawatts in battery capacity. And throughout the day, that resulted in 38 megawatts of increase in charging. But when you just focus on that midday trough, battery facilities averaged 116 megawatts of charging, and that was up 112 of Q4 2023, primarily because we just have new batteries now. So you can see that is having an impact on the demand profile and the increase in underlying demand. And we'll talk about the peak a little bit later as well, and what batteries are doing there. But first, just a couple of words and numbers on this slide. But this is some of the overall records that we saw. So I'm not going to go through each of them, but probably the key ones are those top two. And we've got we had a new minimum operational demand of 511 megawatts that happened on the 10th of November, and then a minimum unscheduled operational demand that occurred on the same day of 474. So the difference between those two is one accounts for a generation to meet scheduled battery charging or battery withdrawal, and the unscheduled operational demand takes that out, so you get a different figure. Then we also saw maximum underlying demand that might have been beaten in Q1 again, but that was an overall maximum underlying demand record. And that was in December on quite a warm day. I think it went something like 43 degrees or something like that. And then a Q4 maximum operational demand. A new one was set on that same day as well, but in the evening. Okay, in terms of fuel mix, this figure on the left-hand side, this demonstrates the change in quarterly average generation compared to the prior year. And so you can see that the increase in underlying demand here is represented by this 105 megawatts. And then we also see what fuel mix decreased, and that was largely that was coal at a reduction of 139 megawatts, and that's due to lower coal facility availability. Now, in terms of meeting the generation that was required from the increase in underlying demand, but also the reduce in coal availability, that was primarily met by distributed PV, but also a lot of gas as well, and then batteries. Now you can see here on the right-hand side, I'll just get my pointer out, that this one also shows the change in fuel mix, but instead of overall, it shows it by time of day. You can see that over the peak period here, batteries took up a large amount of what reduced by coal just over this period. So when we look at the period from 5:30 to 9 p.m, the average contribution of batteries rose 97 megawatts to 103 megawatts on average. When you look at that across the entire day, it's 33 megawatts, but obviously batteries have to withdraw and then charge, and so over the peak, this is where we see the impact pronounced. Just a quick note as well, we had our first hybrid facility. So you can see that here it was doing commissioning throughout the quarter, and that contributed an average of 5 megawatts. So it's a 50 megawatt capacity facility. Okay, so naturally with that change in fuel mix, we would also expect changes in renewable contribution, and that's exactly what happened. So we set an all-time quarterly renewable contribution high in Q4. So Q4 is traditionally the highest quarter in terms of renewable contribution, just because you tend to have very high DPV, good sun angle, and usually milder temperatures than what you'd see in Q1. But we saw a record of 46.4%, and that was largely driven by distributed PV of 25.8%, as well as an increase in the battery share to 1.4%, which is 1.3 percentage points up on the prior year. We also saw an all-time peak renewable contribution of 85.1% that was set on the 17th of November, and that beat there's 84.3% recorded back in December 2022. As I talked about in the introduction, this changes to the fuel mix also resulted in lower emissions. So this graph here presents the quarter sequentially going back to Q1 in 2021. On the left-hand side, or which is represented by the bars as well, that's your overall emissions, and on the right-hand side, represented by the yellow line, you've got your emissions intensity. So carbon emissions were down by 5.3%. So compared to Q4 2023, so that was 2.86 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, and that was driven by both the reduction in operational demand, so gas replacing coal, causing emissions intensity to drop 1.3%. Obviously, coal is more emissions intensive when generating compared to gas, and that resulted in a lower emissions intensity. Whilst it was lower than Q4 last year, it wasn't as low as what we saw in Q4 2022 when we saw much milder temperatures. So it was slightly above that, but it was a decrease on the prior year's quarter. Okay, as I said, We've introduced a couple of new plots into the QED for Q4, and that's really to represent some of the changes that we've seen in the frequency co-optimized essential system service market. So the plot on the left-hand side is the change in FCAS enablement by fuel type. And so we can see here that batteries have increased across each of the FCAS fuel types, FCAS market services, sorry. And we don't include the rock-off control service in this, but we can also see in coal, for the coal fuel type, that was reductions, so they only participate in the contingency market, so there was a reduction there. Gas was probably the one that was displaced the most by the battery. We had an increase in embedded system, and so that's basically a load that trips off to provide the contingency raise service that was in a partial outage in the prior quarter, so being fully available across Q4 2024, so saw the availability of that go up as well. And overall, we saw a net reduction in what was dispatched. I think on the right-hand side, we can see the market share in terms of dispatchable volume for Q4 2024. So this isn't changed, this is just captured market share. And you can see that from 0% in Q4 2023, when no batteries were accredited for FCAS services, to them capturing 36% is quite a large change in the market dynamic there. It was gas was still the primary one at 46%, except for in regulation lower, where we saw batteries take 66% of the dispatchable market for Q4 2024. We expect to see this to increase further into the future as well, as more batteries come online and get accredited for FCAS services as well. Okay, so just a little bit on the costs as well. I've got a couple of slides here. What we saw was a small increase in the real-time market costs. So what this figure represents is basically a normalized figure adjusted for megawatt hours, but to be able to provide a comparable figure across quarters in terms of what the real-time market cost was. So that includes your real-time energy, all your FCAS markets, and uplift as well. And then we also include the non-co-optimized essential system service costs as well within this figure. So I'll go through this in a little bit of detail, but I guess one of the things that we that occurred during the quarter was the FCAS cost review. I think there's a bit more detail on the following slide. Yeah, there is. We had a decrease. Actually, maybe I'll come back to that. But we had an increase in NCAS, so that was up $5.31, as well as FCAS uplift compared to Q4 2023. Now we saw some changes within the quarter, and we actually see that going down from prior quarters this year, but because they were relatively low in Q4 2023, we still saw a little bit of an increase in this quarter. We did see average energy price go down a marginal amount, only $3.71 per megawatt hour, and that was primarily because in Q4 2023 there was a reduction in facility availability, and then another reduction we saw in the contingency reserve raise market. Okay, so as I said, the FCAS cost review, which hopefully most people have heard some analysis and discussion about, came into effect on the 20th of November. So that was really to reassess and relook at, I guess, the FCAS costs and ensure that they represented value. And this obviously resulted in implications for the FCAS markets, and in particular, FCAS uplift payments. So comparing to Q3 2024, so not the prior year quarter, we saw a reduction of 36% in FCAS uplift costs of $28.8 million. When you look at this in a month-by-month basis within the quarter, because obviously this occurred partway through the quarter, so when you compare October, where the old, I guess, rules were in effect, compared to December, which was wholly the new rule changes were in effect, we see a reduction of 85% in FCAS uplift costs. We did see a small increase as well within energy uplift payments, partially because there were some rule changes within that as well that essentially changed the compensation mechanism for providing inertia within the WEM to be compensated by energy uplifts instead of FGAS uplifts. So that's everything I think I have for the QED. But I think especially in this area, we would expect to see some changes in the components of the FCAS market. The changes continue into Q1 2025, and that's partially because this rule change only occurred partway through the quarter. So we would expect this trend to continue of falling FCAS uplift costs. That was it for me in terms of the QED for Q4. Was there any questions? I don't think I saw any come through, but happy to answer.
Yeah, you got one early on, and it was related to elaborate on the hybrid facility. So I think that might have been about 4 or 5 slides into your presentation there, Adrian.
Oh, yeah. So the hybrid facility. So this is an interesting one. So it's a 50 megawatt capacity facility that's fronted by a battery, and that's the thing that injects into the grid, whereas behind that sits a solar farm that charges. So it doesn't withdraw anything from the grid, it charges it from solar and dispatches via battery into the grid. So that's why we've gone with this classification of hybrid, because if you go with solar, you would see a solar fuel mix overnight, which wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's just saying battery doesn't tell the full story there because it doesn't withdraw.
Cool. Did that close off your question, Ganesh, or did you have a slightly different one in mind? Oh, good. Okay, excellent. Yeah, look, QED always a very interesting read. Have a look through it. If you need any more information around it, then certainly please reach out to us, and we're happy to explain and give more details or explanation. We love talking about this type of material. So thank you very much for that overview. So we've got a couple of questions late in the piece. I'm sorry, I shouldn't rush there. So we've got Dora. So it's more of a commentary on NCAS costs related to RCM related costs, and John sits comfortably in the FCAS stack. Yep, I can see that. And Wayne has got a question around FCAS cost in Q3 before the new market. Is it correct that the market paid 120 million plus above 2023 levels in 2024? Not sure if we got the answer to that one in hand. Look, we might have a quick look at that if we can get back to the end of the session. Otherwise, we'll get back to you afterwards, unless.
Yeah, I'll get back to it now. Thanks.
Yeah, but anyway, Wayne, do you want to actually expand a bit more on that query?
So was that to me, Martin?
That's actually to Wayne. It might be easy to explain.
Slide. On the FCAS costs. In my recollection was that prior to the new market, the costs were running about 10 million a quarter.
Sorry, when were you referring to? Nicholas, I might let you answer that one.
Yeah, look, I don't have the exact numbers close at hand. We have published all of those numbers in the QED, so if you're interested, you can absolutely have a look there. You are correct that it is no secret that the FCAS costs in the new market have been substantially higher than the ancillary services costs in the old market. There's a number of reasons for that. Primarily, of course, being that in the new market, it is the FCAS prices and costs are set via a market mechanism, which reflects the true cost of supply and demand, whereas in the old one, it was set via an administrative process operated by the ERA. As we have done with this,
if the costs reflect the true cost of supply and demand, why are they coming down so quickly with the change in rules?
Yeah, so we are absolutely through this rule change, the FCAS cost review, and through a few others that we're working to try to ensure that the prices are, as fairly reflected as fairly and accurately as possible. So one of the things that the FCAS cost review did was that it identified some places in the FCAS uplift costs in particular, where it was providing some higher compensation than it perhaps should have, and it sought to identify that, right? So we don't claim that the market is perfect in every sense, and that's why we continue to work on trying to ensure that the costs are fair and accurate. But what I mean by that is that the prices are a reflection of the costs that are submitted by the providers and calculated through the WEM dispatch engine, therefore a reflection of cost.
But I'm not incorrect that it appears that about 120 million came out of the market and went somewhere.
Went to providers. I don't know what the exact number is.
Predominantly Synergy.
Synergy is a major provider of ESS. Again, I don't know off the top of my head whether it was predominantly them or just them amongst others. But yes.
Happy to have you come back to me on that and let me know.
Sure. Most of that, a lot of that information is in the QED. So open those up and have a look. And what isn't in the QED can also be accessed through the publicly available solution files if you're interested in digging further into it. Thanks.
Absolutely. 120 million may not be a lot of money to you guys, but it seems to have come out of the market and shifted to the state.
Look, it is a sizable amount of money, and we do appreciate that. So in terms of analysing the data, happy if you want to take a look at it, and if you need any help interpreting, we can have a look through that. The sort of fees get it proportioned to the providers of the service. So that's sort of the way the mechanism works. But if you want to, as Nicholas mentioned, if you want to go down a bit more detail, I'm happy to help you work through those files as well, Wayne.
Thanks.
No problems. Okay, just having a look. I just go back to actually the question from Dora. Did you actually? We're actually ahead of schedule, so we've got time to work through some of these. So, Dora, did you want to speak to your query? Maybe we can see if we can actually close that one off while we're in the session.
Sorry, can you go to the previous slide, maybe? Yeah, there is in Q4 2024, everybody knows the NCAS contracts have started, but I wouldn't classify those as ESS costs because the majority of them are reliability service and are actually recovered the same way as RCR consumption shares. So I wouldn't, a very small amount for the minimum demand service may be considered ESS cost, but this is quite a significant amount and reflects, I believe, the costs for NCAS reliability services, which is exactly the same cost as the rest of the RCM costs. And now from the 1st of October, recovered in the same way. So I think I've made that observation before. It inflates the cost for Q4 to 2024 should be allocated to the RCM costs rather than the ESS cost. Make sense?
Okay. I think what you're driving at is that it's probably we haven't quite represented where the cost should really lie in terms of the different market mechanisms. Would that be a correct interpretation?
Yeah. It's called non-optimized ESS, but it was used to deliver reliability services, so it doesn't fit very comfortably on this particular slide. Thanks.
Thanks, Dora. That's an absolutely fair comment. I think it's still sitting in that ESS representation because in the past it was recovered through ESS. As you say, it's now split between ESS and capacity type recovery. So what we'll do is look at providing a more fair representation of that in future QEDs going forward. And as you observe, the vast majority of the NCSS costs that you can see on this page are recovered through that RCM type mechanism. That is correct. Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. Bye.
Yeah, great observation. Thanks very much. Okay, how are we going? Great questions from the floor. I haven't taken any more. We've got as I mentioned, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. So if you want to come off mute and ask a question or drop in the text, we can see if we can close it off now. I'll leave just a couple of seconds. See if anybody wants to pipe up. Okay, I can't see any hands or chat. So look, thank you very much. That was a great discussion. There'll be time at the end for further Q&A if you actually got some questions as we go through the rest of the presentations. So with that, actually quite good because we've just been talking about the reserve capacity mechanism, and I'll hand over to Nitika, and she'll give us an update on the capacity mechanism. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Nitika. I manage the Capacity Investment and Assessment team, which you probably have previously associated with the Reserve Capacity team. But we've had a restructure recently, and currently the team predominantly deals with year one activities of a reserve capacity cycle. So the aim today is basically to take you through a few of the updates in the RCM space, and just to give you an idea of what's keeping the team busy. The commencement of the new WEM rules on the 15th of Jan introduced changes to the RCM with the aim that it continues to achieve system reliability at the most efficient cost for WA consumers and considers current and future system demand profiles. One of the key RCM changes has been the introduction of a new flexible capacity product for the 2025 and future reserve capacity cycles. Proponents can now apply to receive either peak certified reserve capacity, which is what the process has been so far, which is what the mechanism has allowed so far, or both peak and flexible CRC for new capacity. And new capacity essentially is new facilities and upgrades to existing facilities. So this is applicable for the 25 reserve capacity cycle, which relates to the 27-28 capacity year. A caveat that there is no obligation for existing facilities holding peak capacity credits to apply for flexible capacity. However, it is an opportunity for eligible facilities to potentially earn a top-up payment. Another change that has come through has been the addition of a 10-year fixed price option for eligible components of scheduled and semi-scheduled facilities. And this was an outcome of the WEM investment certainty review, which also supports investment in the WEM. I do want to iterate that CRC applicants who opt for a fixed price facility or a fixed price component will be lower in the Network Act's quantity priority order compared to capacity that has not been nominated for a fixed price. The new WEM rules also enable distributed energy resources, DER, to participate as DSP in the CRC process. If we can move to the next slide, please, Laura. And thank you so much for driving this for me. AEMO has released the request for EOIs, expressions of interest, for any new capacity that proponents are intending to bring online for the 27-28 capacity year. Now, this process is not mandatory. However, we very much encourage capacity proponents to submit an expression of interest. The EOI template has been refined and is available on the website. It is based on feedback received last year. So thank you to those who have already submitted an EOI. The process is important because it does give AEMO an idea of what capacity is likely to come online 2 years ahead. And as you can appreciate, it is quite important as we look at the energy transition by 2030. This year, we have expanded on the content in the request for EOI report. We have included scenarios around the potential capacity investment gap in light of the planned Collie power station retirement, and have also considered the risks of coal supply issues and the resulting impacts on coal generation capacity in the 27-28 capacity year. The gap is between 158 and 592 megawatts. And I do want to note that this gap is preliminary. This was just preliminary analysis that was considered and as a signal to the market as to what we anticipate happening. But please note, this will be refined as part of the 2025 WEM ESU, the Electricity Statement of Opportunities, which will be released by the 10th of June at this stage. The EOI notes the key dates as well that proponents must keep in mind when registering facilities. The whole purpose of the EOI is essentially to give an opportunity for participants to apply for an indicative facility class and an indicative facility class technology type. And in the absence of these two elements, you cannot register your facility or have a facility creation form, which you do need to put in a CRC application. We've got quite a few queries as well, just clarifications on what the process is for really new proponents, but please continue to engage with the team like you've been doing so that we can kind of help you and assist you through this process. Submissions close end of March, and AEMO will be publishing the responses by mid-April. The next slide basically takes you through what other activities we are undertaking. The preparations for the 2025 Certified Reserve Capacity process are well underway, and the team and I appreciate the early engagement that proponents and participants have had with us so far. I really cannot stress the importance of engaging with us and Western Power as early as possible to improve your chances of putting in a valid Certified Reserve Capacity application. Every year, we run an annual Certified Reserve Capacity workshop to take participants through their obligations as part of the CRC process. And in line with our focus on continuous improvement, and given the fact that there have been quite a few new concepts like the flexible capacity product, there have also been quite a few questions on the NAC that we got last year. We have actually released a CRC stakeholder survey. This was done on Friday. I will go ahead and post the link shortly in the chat in case you haven't received it. But the main idea is to gain insights from stakeholders on the type of topics they want us to run information sessions on, what they think the best format should be, and what they have valued as part of the engagement in the previous cycles that we should continue doing. So if you'd like to share your feedback, that would be appreciated. It is a 2-week turnaround because we really do want to act on the feedback and put something out before it's too late. Other activities, the 24-25 summer RC testing process is well underway. Formal tests are now being scheduled for facilities that did not pass by observation, and the summer testing period ends on the 30th of March 2025. And last but not the least, the Commonwealth government-funded CIS Capacity Investment Scheme is ongoing. It is very close to being finalized. The scheme was to procure 500 megawatts of 4-hour storage in the WEM, which is the current availability duration gap. The results of this tender will be publicly announced by March 2025. Which may result in some additional capacity in 27-28 that would potentially reduce the capacity investment gap that I mentioned earlier. But again, important to note is that successful CIS projects will be assessed in the same manner as other CRC applications. So that is me. Do we have any questions as such?
Yeah, you got a couple. I'm not sure if you can see the chat. Otherwise, I can relay them to you if you like.
I can take a look, Martin.
Okay,
can you confirm when the EOI submission closes? I think I did mention that. It should be in the slide as well. That would be on the, just give me a second, so I don't want to mess up that number. End of March. So that's end of March. So that should hopefully answer that question. And I'll check why it says 4th of March, Neil. So please leave that one with me and we'll sort it out. But in any case, you do have additional time if nothing else. Actually, Rebecca, if you're online, can you please check that so that we can close that off, please? Whether it's the 4th of March or the 31st of March, please. Is AEMO able to run another session on the changes on AEMO training site? Naomi, are you referring to the RCM training sessions? Can you please come off mute so that I understand which session you are referring to, please? Okay, I might need to kind of just get in touch with Naomi to understand whether you're talking about the market training sessions that are run, or is it the specific CRC related sessions, because we haven't really put out dates for those CRC related sessions, but I'll definitely make a point to include you in those emails that go out. But feel free to get in touch with us, and I'll post, and I'll put, I think the email address of the team is already in there, but yeah, happy to get in touch with you. Erin, thanks, Nitika. When roughly will the RCM constraint equations for 27-28 be available for project proponents? Again, Erin, there is a timeline. I think it would be end of August, but I can take that through. And while this session is going on, I can close off this question. So Tom, so if CI is injecting up to 500 megawatts and the gap is we could, this is speculative, Tom, and we can speculate till the cows come home. So we'll just have to wait to see what's going to happen, because there's also a certain capacity that could fall off the market in light of the coal transition. So theoretically, that is a potential scenario, but yes, I probably will leave it at that.
All right. Okay. Oh, here we go. Another late question. Oh no, it's Rebecca just answering the other one. So, okay, I don't see any other questions or hands up, but I'm quite happy if anybody wants to jump in. Otherwise, Nick, I'll let you just go and close those couple of queries off before the end of the session. That'd be fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. And over to Mina, who will give us an update on our WIM procedures. So over to you, Mina.
Thanks, Martin. Have we got the slides up?
Not yet. Here we go. Yep, they're up now.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. For those who don't know me, I'm Mina Gilchrist. I look after the regulatory affairs team here in WA, and I chair the APCWG. We thought it might be a bit helpful to provide a few slides on our procedures. You'll all know that we've been progressing a lot of procedures of late. I think we published 20 for consultation last year, so it's quite a lot. And we're looking at probably more than 20 this year. So there's a lot coming up, and we thought this might be another forum we can get in front of you and chat about those. So because we have just recently closed off a few and are just about to release a few more, there's currently just the one open for consultation, the dispatch, settlement and monitoring data procedure. There's an APCWG meeting that will be scheduled for the 17th for that procedure and one other as well, I'll discuss in a moment. And the consultation for these procedures actually been extended to the 5th of March as well. Before we move on to the upcoming procedures, I just wanted to thank the market participants who have provided submissions to our consultation processes over this very busy period. Our procedures are better for your input when we do absolutely the best we can to accommodate your input. Where we can't or where we don't think we can, provided time permits, we always try to meet with you to further discuss and make sure we're understanding your concerns correctly. And we've found those meetings to be super helpful, and we've had great feedback from market participants on that too. So please, if you have the capacity to do so, make submissions to our consultations because we really do value them. There's some links there too where you can also suggest a procedure change if you've got a particular bugbear as well. Go to the next slide, please. Excellent. Okay, so we've done the best we can here to kind of signal the upcoming procedures that you might be interested in. Obviously, at this point in time, they're not complete, so sometimes the order can shift around a little bit. So it is a bit of a best endeavours exercise. The CRC procedure we're hoping to release for consultation later this week, and it will also be at the APCWG meeting on the 17th. A commissioning test procedure will be the following APCWG, so just slightly delayed there. And I won't read through all of the other procedures that are upcoming for March, but just will draw your attention to empty parser and low reserve conditions, as I know both of these procedures have been of interest to industry. Just go to the last slide, please. Thank you very much. And again, I won't read through all of these closed consultations, but these are all of the procedures that we've completed since the last wake of meeting. And we're going to start presenting these to the wake of two, so you can see, you know, what's coming up and what's recently closed. But if you have any questions on these procedures, please reach out and we'll be happy to discuss. There's one in there that's actually not quite a procedure as well, the minimum eligibility requirements for flexible CRC that we've added in too. And there's just a couple of quick slides from me. I think there's a comment in the chat. Oh no, that looks like one for Nidika. Perhaps I'll ask if anyone's got any questions of me, or I'll hand back to the floor. Looks like I'm off scot-free.
Yeah, looks like you haven't got any questions there, so that's great. Yeah, a lot of procedures coming down the pipe. So yeah, just great to get awareness of that. And yeah, also with that, in addition to the forums, I think if you've got any direct questions that you don't want to discuss in the forum, then please reach out to us directly as well. Okay, look, that's the end of the formal procedure or part of the today's presentations. Look, more than happy to take other business. I'm not sure if we can answer the queries at the time or not. I'm more than happy to try. Yeah, so it's over to the floor. If anybody has got any sort of general questions or wants to discuss anything, I'm more than happy to let you come off mute and ask them. All right. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything there, so that's great. Nidika, did you want to close off any other queries that's come through from your session? I know that's only been a few minutes ago. Otherwise,
I think I've started to answer some of that, Martin, but I have to admit that Neil was correct. It is the 4th of March and not the 31st of March for the REOI window closing. So you're correct, Neil.
Okay, that's a good pick up. So we'll just need to amend that to make sure all the communication's aligned. So thanks very much for pointing that out. We'll correct that error. Okay, that's sort of really the end of the formal part of the procedure. Do we have a slide of the upcoming forums in this pack? Otherwise, otherwise we'll wait for that communication to come out separately.
I'll send that out after the meeting, Martin.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, I think that's the end of the end of the session. There's no more further questions. So look, thanks very much for everybody's attendance. We actually had quite a number of people come today, so that's really appreciated. As always, if you've got any suggestions or topics you'd like us to cover in the WACF, please shoot them through. We'll send out a survey as well, I believe, as per our normal practice. These sessions are for industry, so the more productive we can make it for you, the better. Otherwise, I wish you the very best for the rest of the day, and I'll see you in our next forums. So thank you very much.